The research facility on Kepler 442b sat at the edge of the forest, like a metal flower, growing from red soil. 6 months had passed since humans met the Velrians, and the building represented hope for both species. Inside the white walls, scientists from 2 worlds worked side by side, learning about each other and the strange planet they now shared. Liara stood in the observation deck, her large violet eyes scanning through a datapad. She was young for a Velrian diplomat, barely past her training years, but her curiosity about humans had earned her a place on this mission. Her pale blue skin reflected the morning light, and her thin fingers moved quickly across the screen. She was reading human medical files again. Still studying our biology? Jake Morrison walked up behind her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He was a security officer, assigned to protect the research teams during fieldwork. His dark hair was cut short in military style, and his relaxed smile put most people at ease. He had been a medic before becoming security, though few people knew that detail. Liara looked up and managed a small smile. Her people did not drink coffee, but she appreciated the gesture. I find human physiology fascinating. Your species endures so much damage and continues functioning. It seems impossible. Jake set the extra cup down on a nearby table. We are pretty tough, I guess. Comes from living on Earth. That planet tried to kill us for thousands of years. Yes, I have read about Earth. Liara's expression grew serious. Predators, diseases, extreme weather, poisonous plants. Your world sounds terrifying. It had its moments, Jake admitted. But it made us what we are. We learned to adapt or die. Most of us chose to adapt. Commander Helen Price entered the observation deck, her boots clicking on the metal floor. She was in her 50s, with gray starting to show in her brown hair. She had run this facility since it opened, and took pride in the peaceful cooperation happening here. Morrison, Liara, good. I need to talk to you both. Liara set down her datapad quickly. Yes, Commander? We need samples from the crystal formations in the Northern Valley. The ones that glow at night. Helen pulled up a map on the main screen. They might have medical applications for both our species. Liara, your expertise in xenobiology makes you perfect for this. Jake, you will go as security and guide. Jake studied the map. That is 3 hours on foot. Rocky terrain. We should leave soon to get back before dark. My thoughts exactly. Helen turned to Liara. Are you comfortable with this? It will be your first time in the deep wilderness here. Liara straightened her back, trying to look confident. I have been preparing for fieldwork since I arrived. I am ready. Across the room, Advisor Kess watched the conversation with concern. He was Liara's mentor. An older Velrian with skin that had faded to almost white with age. Commander Price. Perhaps another Velrian should accompany them. For Liara's comfort, I will be fine, Advisor. Liara's voice was firm. I need to learn to work independently. Kess approached slowly, his movements careful as all Velrians moved. Liara, humans are unpredictable in dangerous situations. Their history shows violence as a first response to threats. I worry about your safety. Jake felt his jaw tighten but kept his voice calm. Sir, I have escorted 17 research teams in the past 6 months. Every person returned safely. I know my job. You misunderstand me. Kess raised his hands in a Velrian peace gesture. I do not question your skill. I question your nature. When humans face danger, they react with aggression. It is documented in every historical record we have studied. That is not fair, Advisor. Liara stepped between them. Humans fought because they had to survive. They are not monsters. I have been studying them carefully. They are simply different from us. Helen cleared her throat. Gentlemen, lady, this facility exists because both our species agreed to work together. That means trust. Liara will be perfectly safe with Morrison. Kess bowed slightly, accepting the decision but clearly unhappy. Of course, Commander. Liara, please be careful. An hour later, Jake and Liara walked through the main gates of the facility. Jake carried a large pack with equipment and supplies. Liara had a smaller bag with her scientific instruments. The red soil crunched under their boots as they headed toward the tree line. "Your advisor does not trust humans very much," Jake said after a while. Liara looked embarrassed. "He means well. Velrians evolved on a peaceful world. We had no major predators, no wars, no famines. When we learned about Earth, about human history, it frightened many of my people. They cannot understand how a species survives so much violence." "Fair enough. We probably do seem crazy to you." Jake checked his compass and adjusted their direction. "But we are not naturally violent. We just learned to fight when we had to." "I know." Liara climbed over a fallen log, accepting Jake's offered hand for balance. "I have been trying to explain this to others. Humans developed survival traits because your environment demanded it. It does not make you evil. Survival traits." Jake smiled at the term. "That is a nice way to put it." They walked in comfortable silence for a while. The forest around them was strange and beautiful. The trees had bark that shifted colors in the sunlight, and small creatures watched them from branches. Kepler 442b was neutral ground, belonging to neither species. It made it perfect for cooperation. "Can I ask you something?" Liara's voice was hesitant. "Sure. The medical files say humans can function with broken bones, severe injuries, even some organ damage. How is this possible? When Velrians suffer major injuries, we go into shock immediately. Our bodies simply stop." Jake thought about how to explain. "Humans have a lot of backup systems. If one thing breaks, another part tries to compensate. It is not perfect, but it keeps us alive long enough to get help. And we produce chemicals that block pain temporarily. Adrenaline, endorphins. They let us keep moving even when injured. But the pain must be terrible." "It is," Jake agreed. "But pain is just information. It tells you something is wrong. You can acknowledge it and still keep going if you have to." Liara shook her head in wonder. "Velrians cannot do this. Pain overwhelms us completely. We cannot think past it. Different species, different solutions." Jake pointed ahead where the trees were thinning. "We are almost to the valley. Should see the crystal formations soon." The northern valley opened before them like a wound in the earth. Steep walls of dark rock surrounded a flat bottom covered in strange crystal structures. They looked like frozen flowers, each one unique. Even in daylight, they seemed to hold light inside them. "Beautiful," Liara breathed. She immediately pulled out her scanning equipment and began taking readings. Jake did a slow turn, checking the area. The valley walls were high and steep. Several caves dotted the rock face. Dark openings that could hide anything. His instincts told him to be careful here. "These crystals have biological components," Liara said excitedly. "They are not just minerals. They are alive in some way. This could be revolutionary." "That is great." Jake kept his eyes on the caves. "Just stay close while you work. This place feels unstable." Liara nodded but was already focused on her samples. She moved from crystal to crystal, documenting each one with the enthusiasm of a true scientist. Jake watched her work and smiled slightly. Her excitement reminded him why he had accepted this posting. Helping different species understand each other mattered. He just hoped the day would stay this peaceful. Something about this valley made him uneasy, but he could not explain why. He checked his radio to make sure it worked, then settled in to wait while Liara collected her data. The crystals glowed softly, and somewhere deep in the caves, rocks shifted with a sound like distant thunder. 2 hours passed while Liara worked in the valley. The sun moved higher in the sky, making the crystal formations sparkle with inner light. Jake stayed alert, walking the perimeter while she collected samples. The caves still bothered him, but nothing had emerged from their dark openings. "These organisms are incredible," Liara said, sealing another sample container. "They convert mineral nutrients into energy somehow. My people have never seen anything like this." Jake checked his watch. "That is fascinating. But we should think about heading back soon. We have enough samples, right? Almost. Liara pointed to the largest cave entrance in the valley wall. The readings show the strongest concentration comes from inside that cave. If I could get samples from the source, it would make my research complete. Jake walked to the cave entrance and shined his light inside. The beam revealed more crystal formations deeper in, glowing brighter than those outside. The cave walls looked rough and fractured. I do not like it. This whole area feels unstable. Just a quick collection, 10 minutes at most. Liara came to stand beside him, her eyes wide with scientific curiosity. Please, Jake. This could be important for both our species. He studied the cave again, running calculations in his head. The structure looked questionable, but the crystals inside were undeniably more developed. If they had medical applications, those samples could save lives. He pulled out his scanner and ran a structural analysis. The readings came back showing acceptable risk levels. 10 minutes, he agreed. Stay close to me. If I say we leave immediately. No arguments. Agreed. Liara practically bounced with excitement. They entered the cave carefully. Jake went first, testing each step before putting his full weight down. The crystals inside cast blue and green light across the walls, making everything look underwater. Liara followed close behind, already scanning and documenting everything she saw. The growth patterns here are different, she said quietly, her voice echoing slightly. These crystals are much older, maybe hundreds of years old. The cave opened into a larger chamber about 30 meters in. Crystal formations covered the walls and ceiling like frozen waterfalls. Some were as tall as Jake, their facets reflecting light in thousands of directions. It was beautiful in an alien way. This is perfect. Liara moved to the nearest large formation and began taking samples. These readings are exactly what I needed. Jake kept his attention divided between Liara and the cave itself. The air felt wrong somehow. Too still. Too quiet. His military training screamed warnings at him, but he could not identify a specific threat. Just a feeling in his gut that they should not be here. The ground trembled. It was subtle. Just a slight vibration under their feet. But in an unstable cave, any movement was bad news. Jake's head snapped up to check the ceiling. Liara, we need to go. Now, just one more sample, she said, focused on her work. No. Now. Jake moved toward her, reaching for her arm. The world exploded with sound and motion. The tremor that had been building suddenly released. The cave ceiling cracked with a sound like gunfire. Rocks began falling, small ones at first, then larger chunks of stone. Jake saw a section of wall starting to collapse directly above Liara. He did not think. He just moved. Jake crashed into Liara with his full weight, driving her toward the cave entrance. She cried out in surprise as they tumbled together across the rough stone floor. Jake felt her hit the ground hard. Then he rolled away from her, trying to get them both clear of the collapsing section. A rock the size of his head struck his left arm. He felt the bone snap with a sick feeling that traveled up to his shoulder. Before he could react to that, a boulder crashed down on his right leg, pinning it to the ground. The impact drove the air from his lungs. More rocks fell, filling the space where they had been standing seconds before. Dust choked the air, making it hard to see or breathe. The sound was deafening, stone striking stone in a cascade of destruction. Then, as suddenly as it started, the collapse stopped. Silence fell over the cave, broken only by small rocks still settling and Liara's panicked breathing. Jake? Her voice was small and frightened. Jake, are you hurt? He took inventory of his body with practiced efficiency. Left arm broken, compound fracture from the feel of it. Right leg pinned under a boulder that probably weighed 200 kilos. Ribs bruised but not broken. Head clear. Could be worse. I am alive. Are you okay? I think so. You pushed me clear. Liara crawled toward him through the dust. When she saw him, her violet eyes went wide. Oh no. Oh no. 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 Jake's left arm bent at an angle that arms should not bend. The bone had broken through the skin, leaving a tear in his sleeve showing white bone and red blood. His right leg disappeared under the boulder at mid-thigh. He could not feel his toes, which was a very bad sign. "It looks worse than it is," he lied calmly. "You are trapped." "Your arm." Liara's voice climbed toward panic. "I need to call for help." She fumbled for her radio, but it sparked uselessly. The collapse had damaged it. She tried Jake's radio next, but it was the same, broken. "Okay. That is not ideal." Jake kept his voice steady. Panic would not help either of them. "How far are we from the entrance?" Liara looked back. "Maybe 20 meters, but there are rocks blocking the path. I can climb over them, but you cannot." "Right." Jake studied the boulder on his leg. He could see a gap underneath where the stone had landed on a slight angle. If he could shift it just a little, he might be able to pull free, but not with only one working arm and a broken leg. "Liara, I need you to listen carefully. Can you do that?" She nodded, but her whole body was shaking. Velrians did not handle crisis well. They had never evolved the stress responses humans developed. "The boulder on my leg needs to move about 10 centimeters to the left. Then I can pull my leg out. Do you understand?" "I understand, but I cannot move it. It is too heavy." Tears started running down her blue cheeks. "I am not strong enough." Jake had already known that. Velrians were lighter and weaker than humans, built for a gentle world. "That is okay. Just go back to the facility and get help. They can be here in 2 hours with proper equipment." 2 hours? Liara looked at his leg again. "Will you be okay for 2 hours?" He would not. The blood flow to his leg was already compromised. 2 hours would mean permanent damage, maybe losing the leg entirely. But telling her that would only increase her panic. "I will be fine. Just go quickly." Liara stood up, ready to run, then stopped. "Wait. Your face. You are lying to me." "What?" Human faces show emotion. And yours shows worry. The medical files explained this. You think 2 hours is too long. She knelt back down beside him. "Tell me the truth." Jake considered lying again, then decided she deserved honesty. "My leg is losing circulation. 2 hours is too long. But there is nothing else we can do. What if there was something?" Liara looked at him intently. "If you could move, could you help free yourself?" "Maybe. If I had both arms working, I could use leverage. But my left arm is broken. Can you fix it?" The question caught him off guard. "Fix it?" The medical files mentioned field medicine. Emergency treatment during combat. "Can you fix your arm enough to use it?" Jake looked down at his broken arm. The bone was displaced, sitting at completely the wrong angle. To make the arm functional, he would need to realign the bone. That meant moving broken bones back into place manually. It would hurt worse than anything Liara could imagine. "I can reset it," he said slowly. "But Liara, you should not watch that. It will not be pleasant. I do not understand." "Reset it how?" Jake realized she had no frame of reference for what he was describing. Velrians did not practice field medicine because they could not survive the trauma of it. "I need to move the bone back where it belongs. By hand. It is going to look and sound bad." Liara stared at him. "You will move your own broken bone? While conscious?" "Yes. That is impossible. The pain would kill you." "No, it will just hurt a lot, but I can handle it." Jake started mentally preparing himself. He had reset dislocated joints before, but never a compound fracture. This was going to be ugly. "Liara, after I do this, I am going to need your help with the boulder. I will be able to use both arms, but I need you to help push. Can you do that?" She looked absolutely horrified but nodded. "I will try." "Good. Now, I need you to get the medical kit from my pack. There should be something I can use to splint this after." Jake positioned his right hand on his left arm, finding the right grip. His hand was already shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline starting to flood his system. Liara retrieved the medical kit with trembling hands. She set it beside him, then knelt nearby. Her eyes were locked on his broken arm. With sick fascination. "You might want to look away," Jake suggested. "No. I should witness this. If humans can endure such things, I should at least have the courage to watch." Jake almost smiled at that. "Your choice. On 3. 1, 2. He did not say 3. He just moved. His right hand gripped his left forearm firmly. In one smooth motion born from years of medical training, he pulled and twisted, guiding the displaced bone back into alignment. The bone moved under his skin with a grinding sensation he felt more than heard. Then it clicked into place with a crack that echoed off the cave walls. The pain was incredible, white, hot, and all-consuming. But Jake had expected it, had braced for it. He grunted with effort, but did not scream. His vision went gray at the edges for a moment, but he held on to consciousness through pure willpower. When his vision cleared, he looked up to tell Liara it was done. She was lying on the ground, completely unconscious. "Well," Jake said to the empty cave, "that could have gone better." Jake stared at the unconscious Velrian diplomat sprawled on the cave floor and resisted the urge to curse. Pain still radiated from his left arm in waves, but he forced himself to think past it. Liara had fainted. His leg was still trapped. Their radios were broken. This situation was getting worse by the minute. "Liara?" He kept his voice gentle. No response. Her chest rose and fell steadily, so at least she was breathing. Velrians must have some kind of shock response that shut them down when witnessing extreme trauma. It made sense for a species that never faced violence in their evolution. Jake reached for the medical kit with his newly reset arm. Every movement sent sharp pain up to his shoulder. But the arm worked. That was what mattered. He pulled out an inflatable splint and managed to get it around his forearm, then activated it. The splint filled with air, immobilizing the break. It would hold for now. Next came the boulder. Jake examined it from his position on the ground. The rock sat at an angle, which had probably saved his leg from being crushed completely. There was maybe 8 centimeters of clearance under one edge. If he could lift that edge just a bit higher, he could slide his leg out. He looked at Liara again. Still unconscious. He was on his own. Jake braced his back against a smaller rock behind him. His right arm was his strongest, and thankfully it was uninjured. He positioned his hand under the edge of the boulder and took several deep breaths. His trapped leg was mostly numb now, which was either good or very bad. He would find out soon enough. "Okay," he said to himself. "On 3. For real this time. 1, 2, 3. He pushed with everything he had. His back muscles strained. His right arm shook with effort. The boulder shifted slightly, maybe 2 centimeters. Not enough. Jake gritted his teeth and pushed harder, ignoring the pain from his broken arm as it braced against the ground. The boulder moved another centimeter. With a desperate pull, Jake yanked his leg free. The sudden release made him fall backward, and his vision went white with pain. When his head cleared, he was lying flat on his back, breathing hard. But his leg was free. He sat up carefully and examined the damage. His pants were torn, and blood stained the fabric. The leg was badly bruised, possibly fractured, but the bone was not broken through. He could see his toes and managed to wiggle them. Circulation was returning. That was a miracle in itself. "What did you do?" Jake's head snapped to the side. Liara was awake, sitting up slowly with one hand on her head. Her violet eyes were unfocused and confused. "I got my leg out," Jake said simply. "How?" "I was supposed to help you." She looked at the boulder, then at Jake's freed leg, then at his splinted arm. "You moved it yourself? With a broken arm?" Necessity is a good motivator. Jake pulled out bandages from the medical kit and started wrapping his leg. The pressure would help with the bleeding and swelling. "How do you feel?" "Dizzy. Confused." Liara touched her face like she was checking if it was real. I fainted. I have never fainted before in my life. First time for everything. Jake finished securing the bandage. I am sorry you had to see that. I tried to warn you. You broke your own bone back into place. Her voice held a note of disbelief, like she was trying to convince herself it had really happened. I watched you do it. The sound it made, the way it moved under your skin. I needed both arms to get free. It was the logical choice. Logical. Liara laughed. But it was a shaky, uncertain sound. There was nothing logical about what you did. It was horrifying. It was violent. It was the most brutal thing I have ever witnessed. Jake met her eyes. It was survival. That simple statement seemed to hit Liara hard. She looked at him for a long moment, and something changed in her expression. The horror was still there. But now, it mixed with understanding. Or the beginning of it. Your arm, she said quietly. Does it hurt very much? Yes. But pain is just a signal. It tells me the injury exists, but it does not control me. Jake tested his leg carefully, applying weight to it. It held, barely. We need to move. The cave could collapse more. Can you walk? Liara stood up on shaky legs. I think so. Watch me. Jake used a nearby rock for support and pulled himself to his feet. His right leg screamed in protest, and his left arm throbbed in the splint. He felt dizzy for a moment but forced himself steady. He had walked on worse injuries before. They made their way toward the cave entrance slowly. Jake limped badly, leaning on Liara for support. She was stronger than she looked, and her smaller frame fit well under his shoulder. The rocks that had fallen during the collapse blocked part of the path, but they were climbable. I should have listened to you, Liara said as they climbed over a pile of stones. You said the cave was unstable. I insisted we enter anyway. This is my fault. The collapse was not your fault. Seismic activity happens. No one could have predicted it. Jake paused to catch his breath. The pain was getting worse now that the adrenaline was fading. Besides, you tried to help. That takes courage. I fainted. After staying conscious long enough to ask me how to fix the situation. That counts for something. They finally reached the entrance. Fresh air and sunlight felt like a blessing after the dusty darkness of the cave. Jake lowered himself to the ground outside, needing to rest. Liara sat beside him, and for several minutes, neither spoke. Can I ask you something? Liara finally broke the silence. Go ahead. When you reset your arm, why did you not scream? Velrians would have died from such pain. We cannot process it. But you stayed conscious and calm. How? Jake considered the question. Humans produce chemicals when injured. Adrenaline. Endorphins. They block pain temporarily and keep us functional. It is an evolutionary adaptation. On Earth, if you got injured far from help, you had two choices: keep moving or die. Our bodies learn to choose movement, but the pain still exists. You still feel it. Yes, I feel it. But I can choose how I respond to it. Jake looked at his splinted arm. Pain is information. It tells me my arm is broken. But it does not tell me to give up. That is a separate choice, and I choose not to make it. Liara shook her head slowly. My people cannot do this. When we feel severe pain, our entire system shuts down. We have no mechanism to push through it. That is why we developed advanced medical technology so early. We had no choice. Different problems, different solutions, Jake said. Your people never needed field medicine because you could always reach help quickly. On Earth, help was often days away, if it existed at all. So we learned to treat ourselves. It seems so violent. It is violent. Breaking your own bone back into place is absolutely violent. Jake shifted his weight, trying to find a more comfortable position. But violence is not always evil. Sometimes it is just necessary. Sometimes it is survival. Liara was quiet for a long time, processing this. Jake could see her mind working behind her eyes. Fitting this new understanding into her worldview. Finally, she spoke again. I wrote a report before this mission. I concluded that humans were misunderstood. That your capacity for violence did not make you dangerous to peaceful species. I thought I understood you. She gestured at Jake's injuries. But I was wrong. I did not understand at all. Not really. And now? Now I am beginning to. What I saw today was not cruelty. It was not aggression. It was a human doing what humans do. Surviving against odds that would kill my people. Liara met his eyes. The Galactic Council is afraid of humanity. They think you are unstable, dangerous. They see your history of wars and violence and think you will bring that to the stars. That is a fair concern. But they are wrong. I see that now. Liara's voice grew stronger. You did not hurt me. When the cave collapsed, your first instinct was to save me. You broke your own body to ensure I was safe. That is not the action of a violent species. That is the action of a protective one. Jake felt uncomfortable with the admiration in her voice. I just did my job. No, you did more than your job. You showed me what humans really are. Liara stood up and looked toward the facility in the distance. We need to get you back for proper medical treatment. Can you walk that far? Jake pulled himself to his feet with a grunt. His leg barely supported his weight, and his arm was on fire with pain. The walk back would take 3 hours. Maybe 4 in his condition. It was going to be the longest walk of his life. I can make it, he said. I know you can. Liara moved to support him again. That is exactly my point. They started the long journey back to the facility. Jake focused on putting one foot in front of the other, managing the pain with breathing techniques he had learned years ago. Liara stayed beside him, adjusting her pace to match his halting steps. Jake, she said after they had walked for about 20 minutes. Yeah, thank you for saving my life. You are welcome, and I am sorry I fainted. I wish I could have been stronger. Jake managed a small smile despite his pain. Liara, you woke up in a collapsed cave with someone who had just reset their own broken bone. And then you helped that person walk out. That is pretty strong in my book. She did not respond, but Jake felt her grip on him tighten slightly. They continued walking, two beings from different worlds, beginning to understand each other in a way that no amount of study or reports could have taught them. The walk back took 4 hours instead of 3. Jake's injured leg could only move so fast, and they had to stop several times for him to rest. By the time the facility came into view, the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. Jake's face was pale, and sweat soaked through his shirt despite the cool air. The pain had become a constant companion, humming through his entire body. Almost there, Liara encouraged him. She had taken to speaking to him continuously during the walk, keeping him focused and alert. Just a few more minutes. The facility gates opened as they approached. Commander Helen Price rushed out, followed by a medical team pushing a stretcher. Advisor Kess was right behind them, his elderly face tight with worry. What happened? Helen demanded, her eyes taking in Jake's splinted arm and blood-stained leg. Cave collapse in the northern valley, Jake said, his voice rough from pain and dehydration. Seismic activity, no one's fault. The medical team tried to help Jake onto the stretcher, but he waved them off. I can walk the last bit. Pride was a stupid thing to hold on to when you were injured, but some part of him needed to walk into the facility on his own feet. Liara stayed close to him, even as Advisor Kess tried to pull her away. Child, you should rest. Let the humans handle this. No. Liara's voice was firm. I am staying with Jake. Kess looked at her in surprise. Something in her expression made him step back without further argument. They made it to the medical bay, where the human doctor, Gregory Palmer, was waiting. He was a compact man in his 40s, with quick hands and a no-nonsense attitude. He took one look at Jake and pointed to an examination bed. Sit. Now. This time Jake did not argue. He lowered himself onto the bed with a groan of relief. His leg was shaking from exhaustion. Dr. Palmer cut away Jake's sleeve and examined the splinted arm. Who did this splint? I did, Jake admitted. You splinted your own compound fracture? The doctor raised an eyebrow. And reset it first. The doctor went very still. He looked at Jake's face, then back at the arm. You reset a compound fracture in the field by yourself? Needed both arms to get free. Jake felt dizzy now that he was sitting down. The adrenaline that had kept him going was completely gone. Dr. Palmer carefully removed the splint and examined the arm thoroughly. He pressed in several places, watching Jake's face for reactions. The bone alignment is good. Very good, actually. You did this manually? Training from my military days. Military training covers a lot, apparently. The doctor called over a nurse. Get me an X-ray scanner and start an IV. He is dehydrated. To Jake, he said, you probably saved your arm by acting quickly. If the bone had stayed displaced, you could have lost circulation entirely. Liara, who had been standing quietly nearby, spoke up. He also freed his leg from under a boulder with the broken arm. Dr. Palmer looked at her, then at Jake, then back at her. He did what? A large boulder trapped his leg. After resetting his arm, he used both arms to lever the rock and pull his leg free. The doctor rubbed his face with one hand. Morrison, you are either incredibly lucky or incredibly stubborn. Can I be both? Apparently. Dr. Palmer moved to examine Jake's leg. This is going to hurt. Everything already hurts. You cannot make it much worse. The doctor was right, though. The examination of his leg made Jake grit his teeth, but the news was better than expected. No fracture. Severe contusion and muscle damage. But the bone is intact. You will be limping for a few weeks, but you will make a full recovery. And the arm? Hairline fracture of the radius, compound break of the ulna. You will need surgery to put in a pin, but the prognosis is good. Doctor. Palmer started setting up equipment. I am going to give you something for the pain now. Cross. Finally, Jake muttered. As the pain medication entered his system through the IV, Jake felt his entire body relax for the first time in hours. The sharp edges of his injuries dulled to a manageable ache. His eyes started to drift closed. Jake? Liara's voice came from beside the bed. He opened his eyes. She was looking at him with an expression he could not quite read. Yeah? The doctor said you saved your arm by acting quickly. But you could have been wrong. You could have made it worse. Why take that risk? Because doing nothing was definitely going to make it worse. Jake's voice was getting sleepy from the medication. Sometimes you have to make a choice with incomplete information. You take your best guess and hope it works out. Liara thought about this. Velrians do not think this way. We analyze all options carefully before acting. That works when you have time to analyze. Jake's eyes closed again. In a crisis, thinking too long can be as dangerous as not thinking at all. Sophie. Jake's eyes. Jake's eyes. Dr. Palmer gently moved Liara aside. He needs to rest now. The surgery for his arm is scheduled in 2 hours. You should get cleaned up and checked over yourself. Liara nodded but hesitated before leaving. She looked back at Jake one more time, and something in her expression had changed completely from the curious young diplomat who had started the day. The next morning, Jake woke up in a recovery room. His left arm was in a proper cast now, and his right leg was wrapped in compression bandages. The pain was much less, managed by medication that kept him floating in a comfortable haze. Commander Price sat in a chair beside his bed, reading something on a datapad. "Good morning," she said when she noticed him awake. "How do you feel?" "Like I got into a fight with a mountain and lost." Helen smiled. "Close enough. Dr. Palmer says the surgery went well. You will be back to full duty in 6 weeks. Good." Jake shifted slightly, testing his range of movement. "How is Liara?" "Physically fine. Mentally, she has been better." Helen set down her datapad. "She has been in the diplomatic wing all night, writing reports and calling back to Velrian Command. Advisor Kess tried to convince her to rest, but she refused." "Reports about what?" "About you. Mostly. About what happened in that cave." Helen leaned forward. "Morrison, I need to know exactly what occurred." From your perspective. Jake recounted the events, leaving nothing out. The cave collapse, breaking his arm, Liara fainting, freeing himself, the walk back. Helen listened without interrupting. But her expression grew more concerned as the story continued. You reset your own compound fracture, she said when he finished. Jake, do you understand how that sounds to non-humans? Probably insane. Worse. It sounds monstrous. Helen rubbed her temples. The Velrians are peaceful people. They find human capabilities disturbing. Half of Kess's staff wants to file a complaint about exposing Liara to traumatic violence. I saved her life. I know that. You know that. But they see a human breaking his own bones and think it is evidence of inherent savagery. Helen sighed. This is exactly the kind of incident that could damage human-Velrian relations. Jake felt anger rise in his chest, pushing past the medication fog. So, what should I have done? Died politely, so no one got upset? Of course not. Helen's voice softened. You did the right thing, Jake. I am not questioning that. I am just warning you that there will be fallout. Before Jake could respond, the door opened. Liara entered, followed reluctantly by Advisor Kess. She looked tired, with dark circles under her violet eyes, but her expression was determined. Commander Price, I need to speak with you and Jake, Liara said formally. Of course. Helen stood up. What is this about? It is about the future of human-Velrian cooperation. Liara pulled out her datapad. I have been in communication with the Velrian Council throughout the night. They have expressed serious concerns about human stability after receiving preliminary reports about yesterday's incident. Jake felt his stomach sink. Here it came. The official condemnation. The end of his career for the crime of surviving. But Liara was not finished. I have spent the last 8 hours writing a complete report of what happened. Not just the facts, but the context. The reasoning. The necessity. She turned to Jake. I explained that what I witnessed was not violence for its own sake. It was medical intervention. Under extreme circumstances. Child, you are too generous, Kess said quietly. What that human did was brutal. Yes, it was brutal, Liara agreed. But it was also necessary, and there is a difference. She faced her advisor directly. You taught me to understand other species by walking in their reality, not judging from the safety of our own. Yesterday, I walked in human reality. I saw what they face, what they endure, what they are capable of when survival demands it. And what did you conclude? Commander Price asked. Liara took a deep breath. I concluded that humans are the most remarkable species I have ever studied. Not because they are violent, but because they choose not to be. Despite having every capability for it, Jake could have left me in that cave. He could have saved himself and abandoned me. Instead, he broke his own body to ensure my safety. That is his job, Kess pointed out. No, his job was to escort me safely. The moment the cave collapsed, his job became survival. But he chose protection over self-preservation. That choice defines humans more than any amount of violence in their history. Jake found himself unable to speak. The passion in Liara's voice, the absolute certainty in her defense of humanity, left him stunned. I have sent my report to the Velrian Council, Liara continued. I have recommended that humans be recognized not as dangerous allies, but as ideal protectors, a species that understands pain and danger intimately, but chooses compassion anyway. And what did the council say? Helen asked carefully. They want more information. They want to understand human capabilities better. Liara smiled slightly. I believe yesterday changed minds. Not immediately, but it planted seeds of understanding. Advisor Kess looked at his student with something between pride and concern. You have changed, Liara. This experience has affected you deeply. Yes, she agreed simply. I thought I understood humans through study, but understanding comes from experience, not data. I needed to see what humans are capable of, to truly comprehend what they choose not to do. She turned back to Jake. Thank you for teaching me that lesson, even though it was terrible to witness. Jake managed a weak smile. You are welcome, I think. 3 weeks passed. Jake's arm healed faster than Dr. Palmer expected, though the doctor kept insisting that humans were terrible patients who never rested properly. His leg was down to a slight limp, barely noticeable unless he walked for long distances. The facility had returned to its normal rhythm of research and cooperation, but something had changed. Jake noticed it in the way Velrian staff looked at him now. Before the cave incident, they had watched humans with cautious curiosity, keeping a polite distance. Now they watched with something different. Not fear exactly, but a kind of careful respect. Liara visited him every day during his recovery. At first, she came to check on his healing progress, asking detailed questions about human recovery times and pain management. But as the days passed, the visits became more about conversation than medical curiosity. They talked about everything from music to philosophy, finding common ground despite their vastly different backgrounds. On the 22nd day after the incident, Jake was cleared for light duty. He reported to Commander Price's office to receive his new assignment. How is the arm? Helen asked, gesturing for him to sit. Jake rotated his shoulder carefully. Good. Still stiff, but functional. Dr. Palmer says another 2 weeks, and I will be back to full strength. Excellent. Helen pulled up something on her screen. I have been meaning to talk to you about something. The Velrian Council has requested a formal meeting. They want to discuss human-Velrian cooperation going forward. That sounds official. It is. Very official. Helen turned the screen so Jake could see it. They specifically requested that you attend, as a representative of human capability and judgment, under crisis conditions. Jake blinked. Me? I am just a security officer. You are the human who survived a cave collapse and saved a Velrian diplomat. That makes you exactly who they want to meet. Helen leaned back in her chair. Liara's report caused quite a stir in the Velrian government. Half of them think humans are too dangerous. The other half thinks humans are exactly the kind of allies they need. They want to meet you to decide which side is right. No pressure then. Helen smiled. You will do fine. Just be yourself. That seems to have worked well so far. The meeting was scheduled for the following day. Jake spent the evening trying to prepare, though he had no idea what to say to a council of alien diplomats. In the end, he decided Helen was right. He would just be honest. The next morning, he entered the conference room to find it already full. Commander Price sat at one end of the long table. 5 Velrian council members sat along one side, their pale blue skin almost glowing in the artificial light. Advisor Kess was among them, looking as stern as ever. Liara sat at the opposite end from Helen, officially present as a junior diplomat but clearly nervous. Security Officer Jake Morrison, announced one of the council members, an elderly Velrian with skin so pale it was almost white. Please sit. Jake took the empty chair across from the Velrians. 5 pairs of violet eyes studied him with intense focus. I am Council Member Theron, the elderly Velrian continued. We have read Diplomat Liara's report of the incident in the Northern Valley. We have also reviewed all available data on human medical practices and survival capabilities. We wish to understand your perspective on what occurred. Jake nodded. What would you like to know? Why did you reset your own bone? Another council member asked. This one was younger, with darker blue skin. Why not wait for professional medical help? Because waiting meant losing my leg? Possibly my life. The bone was displaced, cutting off blood flow. Every minute I waited increased the damage. But the pain, the council member pressed. Our medical experts say the pain of such a procedure would be unbearable for a Velrian. It would cause immediate system shutdown. How did you remain conscious? Jake considered how to explain. Humans have a different relationship with pain than Velrians. We feel it just as intensely, but we can function through it if we must. It is an adaptation from our evolutionary history. On Earth, stopping when injured often meant death, so our bodies learned to keep going. Is this common among humans? Theron asked. Can all humans perform such medical procedures on themselves? Not all, but many. Any human with medical training could do it. Most humans without training could do it if they had to, though not as safely. Jake met Theron's eyes directly. It is not something we do casually. It is a last resort when no better option exists. A third council member spoke up. Yet, you made this decision very quickly. Diplomat Liara reports you barely hesitated before acting. This suggests a comfort with violence toward yourself. Not comfort, familiarity. Jake kept his voice even. I assessed the situation, determined the best course of action, and executed it. Hesitation would have only made it worse. This is what concerns us. The council member continued. Humans seem to make violent decisions with very little deliberation. To us, this suggests instability. Before Jake could respond, Liara stood up. Council Member Varan. With respect, I must disagree with your characterization. Theron raised a hand. Diplomat Liara, this is not the time. No, please let her speak. Jake interrupted. Every eye in the room turned to him. She was there. She witnessed everything. Her perspective matters more than mine. Theron considered this, then nodded. Very well. Speak, Liara. Liara took a breath, gathering her thoughts. I have spent months studying humans from a safe distance. I read their histories, analyzed their medical practices, reviewed their psychological profiles. I thought I understood them. But I was wrong. She stepped around the table to stand where everyone could see her. Understanding does not come from data. It comes from experience. What I experienced in that cave was not a human being violent. It was a human being competent. Competent? Varan sounded skeptical. Yes. Jake assessed a life-threatening situation, identified the optimal solution, and implemented it without panic or hesitation. That is not instability. That is the opposite of instability. That is training, discipline, and courage. Advisor Kess leaned forward. But the method, child, the brutality of it, was necessary, Liara said firmly. And that is what I failed to understand before. Humans do not choose brutal methods because they enjoy them. They choose them because their environment taught them that sometimes brutal efficiency is the difference between life and death. She turned to face the full council. I fainted when I watched Jake reset his bone. My body could not process what I was seeing. But do you know what happened while I was unconscious? Jake freed himself from under a boulder. When I woke up, he was ready to walk. He did not complain. He did not blame me for fainting. He simply did what needed to be done. This proves our point, Varan argued. Humans are too different from us. We cannot trust species we cannot understand. Then let me help you understand. Liara's voice grew passionate. When the cave collapsed, Jake's first action was not to save himself. It was to push me to safety. He took the injury that could have killed me. Why? Because his job was to protect me, and he honored that commitment even at great cost to himself. She looked at Jake briefly, then back to the council. Humans have capacity for tremendous violence. This is true. But they also have capacity for tremendous compassion. The question is not what they can do, but what they choose to do. And in my experience, they choose protection over aggression. The room fell silent. The council members looked at each other, communicating in some way Jake could not follow. Finally, Theron spoke. Security Officer Morrison, answer me honestly. If you were in danger and had to choose between saving yourself or saving Diplomat Liara, what would you choose? Jake did not hesitate. I would save her. That is my job. Even if it meant serious injury to yourself? Yes. Why? Because she is under my protection. Because that matters more than my safety. Because that is what humans do. Jake leaned forward. We know what pain feels like. We know what injury costs. We choose to take that burden so others do not have to. Not because we are violent, but because we understand violence and want to prevent it. Theron studied Jake for a long moment. You realize this makes you very different from most species in the galaxy? I am learning that, yes, most species would consider your actions irrational. Self-preservation is the primary drive of intelligent life. For humans, protecting others is part of self-preservation. We are social creatures. We survive by working together and protecting each other. Jake thought about how to explain something so fundamental to human nature. When I saved Liara, I was not sacrificing myself. I was fulfilling my purpose. Another long silence. Then Theron did something unexpected. He stood up and bowed slightly in the human style. Thank you, Security Officer Morrison. You have given us much to consider. The council members filed out, deep in conversation with each other. Advisor Kess paused by Jake's chair. You have a strange kind of courage, human. I am beginning to understand what my student sees in your species. After they left, only Jake, Liara, and Commander Price remained. Helen stood and stretched. Well, that could have gone worse. I will be in my office if anyone needs me. She left with a knowing smile. Jake turned to Liara. Thank you for defending humans like that. I was defending truth, Liara corrected. What I said was accurate based on observation and experience. Still, it means something. Jake stood carefully, his legs still a bit stiff. What do you think the council will decide? I think they will recommend closer cooperation with humanity. You challenged their assumptions. That is valuable. Liara walked to the window, overlooking the compound. But more than that, you showed them what I tried to explain in my report. That human strength is not just physical. It is moral. You could have let me get hurt to protect yourself. You chose differently. Any decent person would have made the same choice, perhaps, but not every species can make that choice and survive it afterward. Liara turned to face him. That is what makes humans special. You can endure what would kill others. And you use that ability to protect, not to dominate. Jake joined her at the window. Outside, human and Velrian researchers worked together in the compound gardens, their cooperation looking natural and easy. Do you think this will work? Long term? Our species working together? Yes, Liara said with certainty. Because of what happened in that cave. You showed me that understanding between species requires seeing each other at our most vulnerable. I saw you in pain, injured, fighting to survive. And what I learned is that humans at their most desperate are also humans at their most noble. That is a very generous interpretation. It is an accurate observation. Liara smiled. Besides, I have a personal reason for wanting cooperation to succeed. What is that? I value our friendship. I would like to continue it. Jake smiled back. I would like that too. 4 weeks later, the Velrian Council officially announced expanded cooperation with humanity. The news spread quickly through both species' territories. Some Velrians remained skeptical, but many others were curious about these strange, resilient humans who could break their own bones and keep walking. Jake returned to full duty, leading research expeditions back into the wilderness of Kepler, 442b. But now he did not go alone. Liara often accompanied him, her scientific curiosity matched only by her determination to truly understand human capability and judgment. On one expedition, 3 months after the cave incident, they stood at the edge of the northern valley again. The cave entrance was still there, marked with warning signs now. Do you ever think about that day? Liara asked quietly. Sometimes. Mostly I think about how it changed things. For both of us, yes. It changed everything. Liara looked at the cave thoughtfully. I came to this planet, thinking I understood humans through study. I learned that real understanding requires shared experience. Even terrible experiences. Especially terrible experiences, Jake agreed. They show you what people are really made of. And what are humans made of? Jake thought about the question. Determination. Compassion. And just enough stubbornness to keep going when we should probably give up. Liara laughed. That is the most honest description of humanity I have heard. They turned away from the valley and headed back toward the facility. Behind them, the crystals in the cave continued to glow with their strange light. marking the place where fear became understanding, and a young diplomat learned that sometimes the most important lessons are the ones that make you faint.